All right. Hello, Fortinas, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is March 11th, 2022, the 2-year anniversary of the you know what. Well, brothers and sisters, I'm not going to take too much time on an intro today. I am going to do still a little bit of one, but this one's going to be intense. Um, there's a lot to cover. We're gonna talk about things. There's some nuggets that were found by our brother Jared when we over in the forum that he had posted, and we're gonna talk about a couple of those things. And we're also going to go into some other heavy details. It's really this isn't for new people. How about that? But I feel sorry. I feel sad for those who haven't gotten to this point yet and that are missing out on all of this revelation here in this ministry, because it is gangbusters. You're going to see some things like a couple points that Jared had made, and to look at the people's names and how they represent Jesus in this form and that form, and then you realize, oh my goodness, what it means and what it's saying. And I had this whole conversation. My son and my daughter, they were taken snowboarding by their aunt and uncle, and they went with their nieces for the weekend. So that was nice. But before they went, I was like in a half an hour just explosion of conversation, and that's actually where we're going to start today. And it always goes back to Matthew, guys. It always goes back to Matthew. You're going to find out something today that you're going to say, "Shut the front door." You're going to say, "There's what?" But it all makes sense knowing what we know about what's coming again. But not so much about the again portion, but about that timing of trumpets and who's going to show up and who's going to be a part of this time. That it relates to the two people. They're the same people, but at different times, right? And when you see this, it's going to dawn on you. You see, there's a mystery. I know Ivan will remember this as well. Who else? Oh man, all of you guys will remember this when we spoke about Jeremiah 31, and how Jeremiah 31, we knew and we've known for a long time, for a few years, that it's the time of the rapture. Okay, we've spoken about it, we knew it, and just recently we revealed that the great multitude rapture, the mid-trib rapture, not the pre. For anybody that's new, pre, mid, and post are all true. But for those that understand the mid-trib rapture, we realized that it was at Passover in the 7th year of seals. And it just so happened that that was the passage. That passage actually said, through our sister Rebecca that found it was in the Septuagint, that said it was at Passover. It's perfect. Well, there's more to it than that. And not that there's more to it than the rapture, but I mean, who's involved at that point? Because I know Ivan, like I said, and many of you guys will remember this, it talks about Ephraim. And it's like the Lord speaking, and he says, "My firstborn Ephraim." And you scratch your head. I used to say, "What the heck?" Well, this afternoon it dawned on me because of what Jared had shared and things I was building on in all of it, in relation to the names and who they relate to. And I said, oh my goodness, it means everything that you've heard spoken about this, taught from seminary schools to the pastors to churches all over the world, hasn't yet happened. And in a sense, you're going to understand because you'll already get it, but you're going to say, oh, that's right. If that hasn't happened, then he wasn't yet this. And if he wasn't yet this, then everything we've been told about him being that hasn't actually happened. And the whole reason we're taught that way is because everything they've told us comes from a foundation of looking through the lens of Matthew. It's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. So That's the opening bang that's coming. And then we're going to carry on. We're going to look at some stuff about 40 days. We're going to look into something that seminary schools teach as well. You'll have heard even the Chuck Misslers of the world and everybody else talk about these things over the years. Things like the law of first mention. Okay, the law of first mention, which is part of hermeneutics. That law of first mention. So if it was first mentioned and first described here, then we could pretty much understand that that's essentially the pattern that it played out in. Well, if that's the case, you're going to see something that you probably haven't seen before, but we've understood in other ways of when the actual 40 days of the Son of Man were. It's so crazy. It's so mind-blowing, mind-bending, and that's just part 2. Then we're going to do a little bit more about 40 days, about something Jared had shared with me and said, hey, what do you think about days, years? The only thing that's missing is months. Well, I'm going to show you that the relation of 42 months is bang on as well. It's so awesome. So we've got a lot to cover. It's going to be knockout punch after knockout punch, man. So for anybody that's new, I'm sorry. This is going to be a lot to take. But what I will tell you, for anybody that's new or still quite new, come to this playlist right here. Come to the playlist link and come to this series right here called the Revealed End Times Study Notes Series. Click on this and then come over here and see this playlist. There's 12 videos in here. You must, if you want to have a semblance of understanding, a semblance of following what it is we're talking about in these really heavy, these real deep videos, you have to start here. There's just no way around it. You can also go to the website ministryrevealed.com and you can download the book for free in PDF, or you can buy the book over on Amazon in paperback or in ebook form and read chapter 1 and chapter 2 to start with. But these 2 chapters, these 2 videos are the intros to chapter 1 and chapter 2. 30 minutes of your life for one and 30 minutes of your life for another. All from scripture, all showing you chapters and verse and breaking them down and explaining to you why. And what this first one is, like I was telling my family again earlier tonight, it is the revelation. Without first understanding this intro video right here about who the Gospels are speaking to, or here it says, Intro to the End Time Gospels Revealed. Without that, which was the first thing that was revealed to me in September of 2017, without this, there is no such thing as the opening of the books. It never could happen because it all lays out for us who the Gospels are speaking to. And when you understand, as so many of you do, that it's Matthew that has caused all of this confusion, when you begin to understand that by watching this video here, everything starts to open up. Your questions in the Gospels, why did this say this? Why does this one say that? Why does this one say that didn't even happen? All these things that have caused people to walk away from Scripture. These things that have caused people that were considering Christ and looking at the Scripture and saying, well, that's a complete contradiction, and nobody could properly answer it. These people walked away. We have been given the revelation of it. And if you don't believe me, come and watch and read for yourselves. This is the key to the whole thing right here. See, we've been given the open books, the revelation of the coming end of days. The is to come. But what this has done is brought clarity to the is and clarity to the was. The was is from creation to Christ. The is from Christ until right now that we're still in, until the moment of the pre-trib escape. And the is to come is from the escape till the end. Was, is to come. And in the revelation of the is to come that we've been given here, it has given us clarity and revealed more of the is and more of the was. And isn't it fascinating? Because that's, as we've talked about, as we shared that verse many times over in Ecclesiastes 1, what was shall be. So the Old Testament, from creation to Christ, what was shall be means is to come. And then it says what is. So in the sense of from Christ till the time of the escape, what is to come. So it's saying what was is to come, what is to come, nothing new under the sun. Meaning everything that was in the old, everything in the new will all be compacted into a short period of time of 14 years, 7 in seals, 7 of trumpets, will be compacted together, combining all these things that took centuries and years and decades over them. Will take those key feature events and they will be multiplied in their intensity in the end of days. This all began to be opened by this first video right here. And what this video did, when you begin to understand that and see that Luke is speaking to the bride of Christ, that Mark is speaking to the sleeping church / the house of Israel, and Matthew is speaking to Judah. When you understand that, you realize that the reason the church believes that they've understood 7 years is because they read from the book of Matthew all of their lives. Oh, sure, they read the whole Bible, but their lens of focus is always from the Gospel of Matthew, and they don't realize it. Everything is from a foundation of Matthew. Go read, go listen, go watch anybody else, anywhere, that talks on prophecy on end times, and absolutely every single one of them will go Matthew 24, Matthew 24, Matthew 24, Matthew 24, as if Mark and Luke don't even exist. That's because they think it's just a part of it. They don't realize that the differences are because they're different periods of time speaking to different people. And you'll realize that it's not one set of 7 years. The church that thinks it's only a set of 7 for Matthew has failed to see that Mark is for them who are asleep. Theirs is 7 of seals. That's what you'll begin to understand in this second intro video. And then you go to this third intro video, and this is a newer one, and it's a big one, but it gives you the understanding, it shows you, it breaks it down, and it explains how all of this had not yet been understood, because we taught everything from Matthew. Matthew was the foundation, and there was no understanding as to why we had 2 more synoptic gospels. Why did the Lord do it that way? For a reason. And then you can go and explore these things. Pre, mid, and post are all true. You can see the revelation of the end time 7 churches, that they reveal the periods of time during the 14 years. You can come and understand the gospels revealed as you've never ever understood in the discourses, as you've never understood them before. But none of these matter if you haven't yet started with understanding who the gospels are speaking to. That's how powerful, that is how important it is. It is the master key, if you want to say. That's what it is. It is the master key that unlocks it all. All right. So let's get going into some of this now, because this is going to be so much fun and so much so insane to understand, that some of you guys, you're just gonna freak out. Mind blowing. Like, it's okay. Let's just get going. Watch this. So our brother Jared was going through the names here in Genesis 49. Okay, so he's in Genesis chapter 49, and we know, we've revealed here in this ministry that when Christ came the first time, and you would say, well, this isn't a mystery. We know when Christ came the first time, he came for the house of Israel. Did he not? He came for the house of Israel. That's literally what he said. He said, I come not but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But there's another house. there's the house of Judah. And the house of Judah, right, the Jews, they don't believe in Christ that came. Some of them do, but they were blinded, so they couldn't understand it. So first of all, it's not really fair because they were blinded. But the Christians keep telling them that, no, this is the Messiah. This is the Messiah. He's the one for you. This is Christ. And it's true, but he's not the final Messiah. We've taught on this before. Christ, when he comes again at the end of seals, okay, he's this Messiah that came as the Messiah ben Joseph. But there's ancient teachings from rabbis centuries ago, even probably longer, that believed that there were two Messiahs. See, we're opening with a bang for anybody that's new and you're saying two Messiahs. No, don't get confused. It's still Messiah Christ. But he's coming in another form still. And the Jews are waiting for that conquering king form to come first. They weren't looking for this one that never fulfilled, rebuilding the temple. How could he have rebuilt the temple in their prophecies when he was already there? When the temple was already there when he was there. You see, it didn't jive. And there's no way the churches could have understood this if they didn't understand the two forms in which he was coming. But why didn't they understand the two forms in which he would be coming? Because they learned everything from the Gospel of Matthew. So they could never see it. And when things like this were mentioned in the past, it was blasphemy. But we have proven that he is coming again, and he is going to fulfill the prophecies that are still remaining that the Jews are looking for in their Messiah ben David, right? Through the house of Judah. It still must be fulfilled. So our brother here, give me a second. So our brother Jared goes and looks up these names. And we know that he first came as what? The line of Joseph. He came from the lineage of Joseph. And so when you go look at the name in Genesis 49, it's got the name of all the tribes. And it gives a description of the meaning of their names. Well, look at Joseph. Genesis 49:22, by a well, whose branches run over the wall. Okay? We know it relates to branches when he comes at the end of seals, right? They had palm branches in their hands. So then you get to 23, it says, the archers have sore grieved him and shot at him and hated him. Listen to this. This is where it gets fun. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. Do you see any arrow? There's no arrow either, right? Remember, we're talking prophetically. We know he came as the line of Joseph already, but he will still be this Joseph line when he comes at the end of seals. Even to start the seals, what's he as the Son of Man? Doesn't Joseph, when he comes, Messiah, when he comes as the Son of Man for the 40 days, isn't there a bow in his hand? Or doesn't he come with a bow? Remember this debate? Like it's a bow for shooting, but he had no arrows? That's interesting, isn't it? His name, he has a lot of branches. He was by a well, like the woman at the well. His bow abode in strength, but he had no arrows, just like the white horse rider. Then it says, continuing in verse 24, from thence is the shepherd. What was Messiah? The shepherd. The Jews aren't looking for a shepherd. They're looking for a conquering king. Okay? The shepherd which he came as. And what was he? The stone of Israel. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. How much more clear does this have to be? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that this is the lineage through which Messiah came from in the description of Joseph's name. Then it says, even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above. Go to verse 46. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, on the crown of the head. So what did we have? We had bow, like a shooting bow, but we can't be sure if this bow as the shooting bow without arrows is the same type of bow that the white horse rider is talking about. It might also be just like the rainbow, right? And so a lot of people want to debate it. We've been able to show it in one context as the rainbow. We're able to show it as another context as the bow and no arrows, just as Joseph, because his name meant Christ when he came the first time. But there's another meaning here. They shall be on the head of Joseph. And then we get this strange little piece added that says, on the crown of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. Why? You mean the stone which the builders refused? Who did the lineage of Messiah ben Joseph come for? The house of Israel. The house of Israel. The one who the builders, the stones, the builders, the stone that the builders refused, right? Just like what? If this has a relation, for example, to the Son of Man and the white horse rider, okay, as to Messiah as we know him, how he came the first time, the suffering Messiah on the cross, which all of this is the shepherd, then guess what? If he's coming for the 40 days of the Son of Man, we should be able to find a relation there as well in Psalms 118, which would relate to the 40 days of the Son of Man, as we've taught many times. And look at what it talks about. Verse 22, the stone which the builders refused became the headstone of the corner. There it is. There's one little catch, but this starts to get much more interesting, so hold your horses. Look at what happens. We have this bow description, but what's really interesting in the description in Genesis of the white horse rider in Genesis 6 is when you go into the description of the bow, the description, first of all, the word bow only shows up one time. And the description doesn't really give much except for a bow. You know, it says apparently simple as fabric. So it wasn't even for sure what it meant. So that's why there's been all these ways of looking at it and trying to understand. But one of them is this bow, which can represent also the rainbow. But there's something else going on in Revelation 6. And we notice that there's also here in Genesis 49:26, this little wording that says, and on the crown of the head. I mean, it's one of those things that when you look at it, it says, they shall be on the head of Joseph. Why would you have to say on the crown of the head? That's where you would put it, wouldn't you? So why would you have to reiterate it like it's something separate? Watch this. Look at what the crown of the head means. The crown of the head as the part most bowed. As the part most bowed. And I saw this and I said, wait a second. This crown of the head, this bowed. And I said, you know what? Let's look into the root of this, because when I look into the root of the white horse rider, I find the exact same connection. Okay? To shrivel up by contrast, to bend the neck in defense, to bow or bow down. It's the bow of the head. It's the crown of the head, which means the bow of the head, that bend, that bow of the head. So for everybody that debates, is it supposed to be this kind of bow that he has? Well, Joseph has that one covered. He has the shepherd covered. He has the stone covered. Oh, wait a second. Isn't there something else we were looking at with the stone? The stone that the builders refused? So if he's the stone, do you think it's possible that he's also the stone's throw away? The one we've talked about so many times, only found in Luke? He's the stone's throw away? We've shared on this many times, and when we looked at stone's throw, you can look at stone's throw, and based on what we've seen within our understanding of the calculations, it would appear that it comes at about right here. Now, I believe the escape is relating to here, but there might be some sort of connection to here, because what we're looking at is from here to here. This 7 after 7 to the 8th day. This is the 1 week period of time where all of human history will change forever. And the connection to the stone's throw is right here. What am I saying with that? That Messiah might actually be that stone. He might be that stone that when it comes through and people see it, I'm not saying it's going to hit the ground and he's going to pop up and say, ta-da. That's not what I'm saying. But the representation of that stone is his coming. That when the Son of Man will be here. Okay, so it's falling right in this range that we've been talking about for a while now. But watch this. All we're doing so far is making connections to the Son of Man, which we know is directly connected to Joseph. When Christ came the first time, he was the lineage through Joseph, which is why, even though it was his adoptive father, right, the one who took care of him in earthly form, it was also Joseph. That wasn't by accident. You see, the lineage didn't come from him, but he also represented the Joseph father figure through the line that he came from. This is going to blow you away, I promise you. So now here we are looking at the crown of the head. And this crown of the head means bowed, or to bow, or the bow of the head, the crown of the head being the bow. Okay, watch this. Let's go to Revelation chapter 6 and check this out. And I saw, and behold, a white horse rider. I keep thinking to myself, man, I think I even said it in the last video. We have shown the white horse rider from, I thought, every angle possible that has flat out proven it's the Son of Man. The only people that believe it's the Antichrist are those who still don't understand that it's 14 years. You can debate it all you want. When you understand the truth of seals and trumpets in the period of time, you will get it. All right? You will see. Because the actual tribulation doesn't begin until the sword is given. Okay, well, does the tribulation begin at the escape? Yes, it technically, of course, begins at the escape, because tens of millions of people vanishing, people are going to be freaking out. Of course, it begins at the escape, but the actual beginning of the 7 and 7, the 14 years, doesn't start until the attacks begin, which is after the Son of Man, who is the white horse rider, before the great sword is given. And in fact, on a side note on that, we've been teaching here, I've been teaching here for, oh man, I think about over 3.5 years, that I believe there's this number that will be 8 billion. Either 8 billion born or in the womb and born, but a total of 8 billion people will be on the earth at the time of the escape. Not 8 billion and 1, not 7,999,999, it'll be 8 billion. And that will be the exact number at the time of the escape. However, the Lord counts that 8 billion born in the womb, how many days in the womb, maybe 14 days in the womb, and then it counts however that might play out. It'll be 8 billion. I've explained how at the time of Noah, it was believed it was 7 to 11 billion. And I said, I believe that number was 8. And in the end of days, when they have multiple wives and children again, it'll be 8 billion when everything's said and done, because again, they're going to be living for hundreds of years. And it'll be 8 billion, 8 billion, 8 billion. And the reason was because Messiah's birthday, Messiah's name is 888. And the connection was discovered based on the 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. And I realized that this number for the pre-trib escape of the bride of Christ, when the Son of Man, white horse rider, when he's coming just before his time starts, bang, the bride is gone in the pre-trib escape. And I believe that the bride, the pre-trib escape group, is about 2% of the population of the world. I believe it's actually going to be exactly 1.8% of the population of the world, which is about 2%. And we've been teaching it like that for about 3.5 years now. And that percent equals 10% of the church throughout the world. Okay? So the 10% goes and it equals about 2% of the population of the earth, which is going to actually be 1.8%, which is interesting because it will start at 18. It will start with Psalms 18, the escape and the Son of Man. All right. So the reason I'm bringing this up as a side note is one of our brothers, Edwin, in the forum shared with me a message, and I don't have it word for word in front of me, but he sent me a message. Now, he does some powerful work. They cast out demons, they heal people, they do all sorts of things in a ministry he's a part of. And there was this woman who gets words, I believe he said it was words of knowledge from the Lord. And she's very well known for giving words of knowledge over the years to people, that these things have happened, these things have come to pass. They were known. And he said he was talking with her the other day, and he was so excited he had to send it to me. She has no idea who Ministry Revealed is. She's never watched our videos, any of the teachings or anything. And she told him she felt the Lord was telling her that about 2% of the population of the world are about to go. What? So needless to say, he freaked out on that one and went into telling her some things about what we teach and how that was understood. And here she was having no clue, confirming exactly what we've been talking about here for about 3.5 years. Sorry, my heater's not working properly and it's still a little chilly at 0, as you guys can see. There we go. All right. So that was a fun side note. You know, these little confirmations like this that just come out of apparently nowhere, you know. So that was powerful. But look at what happens here. We're talking about the white horse rider. We've shared it from so many angles, and now we've got more and connected directly to the lineage through Joseph as it should. And we know that it could either be a bow as a bow and arrow, but there's no arrows. But what about it being the crown of the head like it was talking about with Joseph? Is it possible that this has a relation to a crown of the head? I'm going to show you why. Listen to what it says. The white horse rider, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. Wasn't that interesting? Where do you put a crown? On a bow with no arrows? You know, you put a crown on a head. We just saw right here, the literal translation is the crown of the head. The bowed part of the head, which was the description in Joseph's, being a bow for an arrow, but also a description of the bow of the head, the crown of the head, where the crown will be placed. And why it jumped out at me was because of the word bow or bowed, the bowed part of the head. Watch this. Remember I said this really, we don't get any description. It says a bow. A bow. Apparently, as the simplest fabric. Bow, used one time. So there's really, it seems like zero reference for us to understand. And that's why there's been so many opinions as to which way it goes. Well, watch this. Look at the word 5088, the base word that it comes from. To produce from seed, as a mother, right? To bring forth, be delivered, or what? Be in travail. So the word bow goes to the root word that means to be in travail. And Joseph's name means, and his entire description being related to the Son of Man, with bow, the shepherd, the stone, and the crown of the head. When is the crown of the head, brothers and sisters? When is the crown of the head? You see, we just went from Revelation to Genesis, Genesis back to Revelation. When is the crown of the head? When is this bow of the head come? As a woman starts her travail? Hello. Hello. Remember, this is exactly what we've taught. Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And I said that the escape of the bride of Christ, I've been saying this for almost 4.5 years, between the very end of verse 1 and the beginning of verse 2 of Revelation 12, is the escape of the bride of Christ. Because the portion of travailing in birth is what is related to the Son of Man, his 40 days. You see, we've taught on this before. It was one of the points that I had made that proved that it was the Son of Man who was the white horse rider that comes during the 40 days, which is the travailing. After the escape of the bride of Christ, the ark door is locked, and it's 40 days of chaos after the escape of tens of millions of people, and chaos begins to break out on the earth. The Son of Man is here during that time, during this travailing time of birthing, of birth pains, but the pains haven't started yet, just the travailing. And what was the definition from 6, Revelation 6, at the white horse rider? He had a bow and a crown was going to be given to him. And the word bow comes from the word that means to be in travail. A mother, a woman in travail. Do you know what happens when a mother or a woman is in travail, brothers and sisters? Crowning. Crowning. I had another picture I was going to use that it wasn't a bad one, but I shared it with Ivan, and Ivan's like, here, maybe you should use this one. So I don't know if this is the one Ivan sent, but I found another one. I was like, oh, that's a much better perspective. So what is it? During the onset of labor, right? During this portion of time, what happens? A crowning. A bow. The crown of the head. The bow of the head appears. And it's during the period of travail, which the beginning of the 40 days is the beginning, is the crowning of the head. I just thought that was awesome. It was just such a perfect connection that not only with all of the wording proved to us that Joseph and his meaning of his name was directly related to the Son of Man when he came as the suffering Messiah the first time, but it also relates to when he's coming as the Son of Man for the 40 days. These things were all the bow, the stone, the crown of the head. All of these things were the relation to when he's coming as the Son of Man. And I thought that was exciting. Give me 1 second. So now the next part, okay? This was exciting. We're starting to see it develop in his name. But Joseph, as we know, is when Christ came the first time, and he is still this Joseph lineage until what? Until he comes as Judah, right? When he comes for Judah, when he comes for the house of Judah, the story's going to change. Remember, what is he when he comes for the house of Judah? He's going to be a lion. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. All right, I think I got the heater issue figured out. So now watch this. We've talked about here that he's coming a second time, and when he does, he's coming as a second Messiah, if you will. It's still him. But you see, we have been told all of our lives that he is who? We've been told all of our lives that he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. We've been told he's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Is he the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Yes. Has he already been the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Uh-oh. What is going on? Is he the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Here's the description of Judah. Okay. Thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down to thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? You think he's a lion? Right? We always say the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And yes, of course, Messiah is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But not yet. What? Not yet? How could he have been the Lion of the tribe of Judah already if he was through the lineage of Joseph when he came the first time? And when he comes as the Son of Man during the 40 days, he's still under the line of Joseph. He's not yet coming as the conquering king. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Remember I told you in the beginning that these things that we've been taught in all these churches and all these things around the world for centuries, that he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so what have we all been taught? That not only was he's the suffering Messiah, the suffering shepherd that died for us, but he's also the conquering king. What did he conquer in the globe for this? Of course he conquered death for us. Of course he did these things. Of course he's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But we've been told he already is. We've been told that when he came the first time, he wasn't only this suffering servant and shepherd. We were told he was also the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But he wasn't. Is he? Yes. Has he already been? No. No. Brothers and sisters, this goes back to this story I was telling you right in here, in this playlist. In this one, where is it? Right here. It's all because of Matthew. The whole thing is because of Matthew. Do you understand? This gets so much deeper, so much more powerful when it dawned on me this afternoon and I said, oh my Lord, because everything we've been taught comes from the Gospel of Matthew's foundation, from the Gospel of Matthew's perspective. We've been taught that he already was, but he hasn't been. Let me show you more revelation about this. Listen to what it says about him. Okay, after being a lion mentioned 3 times, a lion of the tribe of Judah, of course. Then it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Well, watch this. Why don't we go back to Revelation again? Go to Revelation chapter 12. And now, when we go to Revelation chapter 12, we're not looking at the crowning of him during the travailing for 40 days. We're looking at him coming forth on in the clouds as the end of seals comes. And what does it say? And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. What's a rod, brothers and sisters? The scepter. So when he comes at the end of seals, he's coming as what? The Lion of the tribe of Judah? With the scepter that shall not depart from Judah? Nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come? Until what? Paradise comes? And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Do you know there's a gathering, of course? There's the time of the 144 at the in the 7th year of seals, right? At the end of the 6 years, when he comes on heavenly Mount Zion. Watch this. Let's go look at it. Genesis. Let's go look at our beautiful, this is the eSword program. By the way, guys, I got a note the other day that eSword is available on Android. So all of these years I've been using my Bible or my something app that was free, but now eSword is available on Android. I would think it was $250 Canadian. So I got the app, just so you guys know. I don't have any stake in it. It's just a beautiful program. Without it, we could have never learned what we've learned. So we see unto Shiloh, right? The tranquility, Messiah, until Messiah come. And unto all shall the gathering of the people be. Well, we know that the gathering of the people is that rapture portion is the Moses isn't allowed to take them across, but Joshua comes, Yeshua comes, and he's the one that's going to take them across and bring them into their land. We're going to share on some of that still to come too. But listen to this. You want more proof? First of all, we can show the scepter. But you know what else we can show? We just showed when Messiah comes. We know that the connection coming to it with the scepter is that 7th year of seals after the 6th years of seals. And it says what? Verse 11. Bring his fowl unto the vine. Binding his fowl unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Did he do this yet? No, he didn't. Could he have been the Lion of the tribe of Judah yet? No. He could not have yet been the actual Lion of the tribe of Judah yet, because Judah hasn't recognized him. Because they're waiting for their conquering King Messiah. Do you recognize this? Verse 11, binding his fowl unto the vine, and his ass's colt to the choice vine. Do you guys know the only place you find that in the Gospels is in Matthew? Do you know in the other Gospels, and when you go into the Synoptics, Luke and Mark, all you find is 1 and not 2? Go into the village over against you, and straightway he shall find an ass tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them unto me. Judah, Lion of the tribe of Judah, the scepter, which is when he comes at the end of the 6 years of seals. As Messiah, when he brings peace after that conquering takes place. And he's gathering the people to him. And what happens? You have the time of about what? Mid trumpets. binding his fowl unto the vine, and his ass's colt to the choice vine. And when he comes at the end of trumpets, remember, he gets cut off, right? And when he comes at the end of trumpets, what's he going to do? He's going to wash his garments in wine, his clothes in the blood of grapes. Does that ring a bell to some of you guys as well? I'm sure it does. Revelation chapter 14. Look at the end. Listen to the exact wording we were just talking about. Okay? This is talking about the grape. This is the harvest. This is at the end in trumpets. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden down without the city, and blood came up to out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlong. What is this talking about? When he comes in the wrath, and his eyes are red with wine, and his teeth white as milk. This is destruction at the end. When he brings that devastation at the end and destroys all who came against. I want you guys to let this sink in for a moment, what this is telling us. This is telling us that everything we've been told about him having already come as the Lion of Judah hasn't happened yet. What? These are things we've been taught all of our lives for centuries. And as much as he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, he has not yet been. He has been Joseph, the shepherd, the stone with his bow and the crown of his head. Do you understand how powerful that is? Do you think, again, just like we showed in the last video, do you think it's a mystery that this fowl and ass, both of them are only talked about in Matthew? What? Well, watch this. I told you it's going to get even a little crazier. Some powerful revelation connected to all this. Well, watch this. This is what we're talking about right here, and this is something we've talked about in the past. Jewish tradition of the late. Okay, so this was from a long time ago. There were sages or rabbis a long time ago, like 2,000 years ago, that believed that the scriptures were related or revealing two messiahs. And it was cast aside. It was not feasible. It wasn't going to be. And you understand that over hundreds of years of teaching with a foundation in the Gospel of Matthew, which is the perspective of the Jews, the Christians have completely missed it. Because if you're at the end of Mark and you think that's the rapture, which it is, that's the rapture of the great multitude after the 7 years of seals, which is where the great multitude rapture of the church is, then guess what? You're in the exact place where this is talking about. You're not seeing that there's two, because it's as if you're already at the end of the other one, and all that's left is for them to start believing in Messiah. We've completely cast aside that the Jews say, well, he never did this. He never rebuilt the temple. He never defeated all the enemies of Israel. And you got to say, well, if you believe in him, he will. Well, that's not going to rebuild the third temple. And then we've all been told, and I was going through all this with my family today, and then we've all been told that the Jews are going to fall for the Antichrist because they think it's the Antichrist who's going to allow the temple, and they're going to rebuild the temple. And then he's going to step into it and say, haha, suckers, I tricked you. I'm the Antichrist. No, they don't realize that they're at the end of seals. And what they're seeing is the 7 years of trumpets. But they don't know that. So they take everything related to seals and they mash it with the things found in trumpets. And so they think the Antichrist is going to show up in the middle once the temple is built, not realizing that they are two separate periods of 7 years, and that it's actually Messiah who is here, and the temple and the rebuilding is taking place while he is here overseeing the rebuilding of it. What a mess being taught from Matthew has been. And this is no different. It's true. There are two Messiahs, but they are the same Messiah. He just came as the suffering servant shepherd first, and then he will come as the conquering king of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Listen to what this says. Jewish tradition of late, meaning a long time ago, or early post-Second Temple period, okay, into maybe even 1500 years ago, alludes to two redeemers, one suffering and the second fulfilling the traditional messianic role. Hello. Namely, watch this, it's going to blow your mind. Namely, Messiah ben Yosef and Messiah ben David. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Remember, there was two descriptions. Okay, there were two name breakdowns, genealogies. Well, Messiah ben David, because why? Ben David is under the house of Judah. And what about Joseph? You see, the first one would be what? Two redeemers. The first one is a suffering one. And that first suffering one is what? Messiah ben Yosef, Messiah ben Joseph. Just as his name tells us. But are you ready for this? Also known as Moshiach ben Ephraim. Ephraim, also known as Messiah ben Ephraim. Remember, Joseph and his two sons and the double portion went to Ephraim. Does that ring a bell to some of you? Remember when we shared on this? Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 31. Remember in Jeremiah 31 verse 8, we recently shared this. This was that finding that Rebecca had shared, that this right here in verse 8 said, behold, I bring them from the north country and gather them. See, there's this gathering that we were talking about. Okay, and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and I will and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child, together a great company shall return thither. And in the original Septuagint translation, it says at Passover. And we shared why it's Passover, because this is called the new. This is called the new wheat. So yes, the harvest takes place at the fall time, at the fall feast, but it's not brought in, it's not used until Passover. Until Passover, which is about 6 months into the 7th year of seals. But look what comes next. I know Ivan and many of you, we've talked about this in the past. Verse 9, then they shall come with weeping, and with supplications will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. This had me scratching my head for a long time, that I put it in the stockpile in the back of things to still dig into, things to still discern. And I've talked about it with some of you in the past. How on earth is Ephraim Christ? How on earth was Ephraim related to Christ at the end of seals? Why is it Ephraim? It always baffled me until this afternoon. Until this afternoon. Not because I didn't already know there were two comings, two typologies of Messiah. Both of them still the same guy, but the different lines representing the different times, the different types of him coming. Because we know when he came, the first time he came for the house of Israel, just like he said. But he also told us, which everybody seems to forget, that he blinded the Jews. Isaiah 6 said he was told by the Father to make sure you blind them. If you don't blind them, they might actually recognize who you are. And you're like, what? Wasn't that the whole point, that everybody should recognize him? Nope. Otherwise, he went to blinded them. Theirs is Messiah ben David through the line of Judah. The lion. You follow? But it wasn't until going like this and seeing this pop up this afternoon that I instantly said to myself, oh my goodness, there's the answer to Jeremiah 31:9. We have known for years that all of this discussion here is directly related to the end of seals and the time of the rapture. We've now recently been revealed that in the revelation, it is indeed at Passover time. Indeed at Passover time. And now we can understand why it says, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Because Ephraim was the line through the tribe from Joseph. Mind-blowing. And what does that mean? It confirms everything. It confirms the craziest thing I'd ever taught on. The craziest thing I had ever revealed was that the Son of Man, that Messiah would come again, but this time he must come for the house of Judah. And for the only way for that covenant to be solidified is if there's a shedding of blood. Which means he would have to do these things again. And that in doing it again, it followed Leviticus chapter 1. That said the first was an ox sacrifice for the atonement of sin. The other was a lamb. And the other was doves. So in reverse, it was doves at his birth. It was the lamb for the house of Israel. And it'll be the ox for the house of Judah. See? Unbelievable. We've shared on this in the past. Remember, we had some fun playing with this because we see things like, why is Rachel weeping for her children? Because her children were not. It's the end of seals. Rachel is there. Rachel is his. He's now served the 7 years of seals for Rachel. But her kids aren't there yet. Jude is not there yet. They still have their portion of time of trumpets for the house of Judah. That's why they're not there. And the Lord comforts them. Refrain your voice, refrain from weeping and your eyes from tears. For your work shall be rewarded, said the Lord. And they shall come again from the land of their enemy. And there is hope in thine end, saith the Lord, that thy children shall come again to their own border. You see? This rocked me this afternoon. It really, really just had me saying, what on earth? Are you telling me that everything we've been taught and believed to have him already have represented, that he hadn't? I told you guys, the more you look at the Gospel of Matthew, the more you dig into the details of it, the greater you realize so much of it has not happened yet. This is what we were talking about. The was, the is to come. The was shall be, the is shall be. All of these things building and revealing the picture in a detail that really, really gets that really gets hard to swallow. So let's keep going now from this point. That was just so awesome. Now this is going to be fun. This, you're going to have to follow along, obviously. But this is to help people out in relation to this. Okay? We've been talking here in this ministry for a long time that this Zechariah chapter 7, which is the equivalent in his 14 chapters, the chapters to years, that this is the equivalent of the 7th year of seals. The Lord is coming and he says, look, when you fasted and mourned, everything is past tense. When you fasted, when you mourned in the 5th month, in the 7th month, even those 70 years, the Lord says, did you at all do it unto me? And in verse 7, he says, should you not hear the words of the Lord, which cried by the former prophets when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and when the cities thereof round about here, when men's inhabited the south and the plain? Everything is past tense to the 70th year, which, as you guys all know, I don't need to spend a lot of time on this, which, as you guys all know, relates back to chapter 1, saying these 70 years, whereas chapter 7 said those 70 years. What happened at the tail end of the 70 years? Bam! Affliction began, and they got scattered. All of Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. And we know that they're removed from the land for the 7 years of seals, so that the land could rest. The only thing that'll be built, as we know, is the foundation during the time of seals. Now, this kind of brought up a bit of an issue, and it was a very valid point by a brother. And I love questions like this and comments, because it lets me know, as much as I know everybody, generally everybody is listening and getting it, those that are really digging in and seeking it, it lets me know that you guys really are. And the question was that when we look at, and it's related to this, right? It's related to the 5th month and 7th month. But what it goes back to is this core piece of scripture and definition right here. Exodus 34:22. Okay, and it says, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, comma, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Okay, not at the end of the year, but at the year's end. And it was a very specific one, which means circuit of the sun. We've broken this down many times, but what I'm about to share with you today, we have never ever broken down before, because I had never seen it. I believed that this year's end, that the meaning of this was related only to the course of the sun, the circuit of the sun. But if this was indeed the case, this word is used 4 times. Okay, we've shared it many times. So it's used 4 times. It's used here in Exodus, and we have proven that this year's end is directly associated with this definition right here, the course of the sun, or the circuit, okay? A revolution of the sun. And I thought that it meant all four of these definitions were related to the course of the sun, because one of the other places you find it is in Psalms 19. And in Psalms 19, it's the circuit right here, okay? Which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber and rejoicing as a strong man ready to run a race. His going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit, there it is, unto the ends of it. This is clearly the circuit of the sun, just like it says. But what had happened is there was another one that then left us scratching our heads. Because if all four of these definitions where it's used, okay, if all four of them are to be related to the circuit of the sun, well, we have an issue. And the issue comes in 2 Chronicles 24. This is something we also said happens at the time of the beginning of the 14 years. Well, in the past, as you guys know, until the recent past, we believed that it was the 150 days, okay? It's the Feast of Weeks. Then the morrow after, you count 50 days. And then we thought it was the official 14 years beginning, because we know the attacks will happen within this time. Well, what wasn't making sense was that there's no way, while the Son of Man was here and Jerusalem was being warned, as the Son of Man will do, as Jonah did, that while he's giving the warning and saying that when you see your guys being compassed about, it's time to flee, how could they have been attacked? Why would he be warning of a coming attack if he was already there when there was an attack that happened? Everybody would be yelling, yo, it's too late. You're too late, dude. You see, it doesn't make any sense. So what ended up happening is we just had the recent revelation right here 13 days ago, that in this video we revealed that it wasn't just one set of 50 after the Feast of Weeks, but that Feast of Weeks count, you see, this one right here from the true Feast of Weeks, June 14th this year, the 15th of Saban, from the 15th of June is day one of the 50-day count. And we've shown this, and I believe that the bride is gone anywhere from here to here, from day one or by the 8th day. We're going to talk about more within this as well. But that the 50 days ended right here, okay? This is when the Holy Ghost was going to give the anointing of what we call Acts 2.0, and the Holy Ghost was going to leave. And then what happens? Well, you go look up history, and this is when the compassing and the breaching begins. And what happens? Bam! 9th of Av, Israel is attacked. And Israel is going to be attacked by Babylon. And no, I do not believe this Babylon reference is Mystery Babylon, which is probably the America one. I believe this Babylon is actually going to be Iran with Iraq, that's what's going to be this first short attack that takes place. Just like we showed a video from 2010. It's going to be a very short-lived Middle East war that breaks out. And this is when it will begin, towards the end of the first week of August. And that when you count 50 days from the 9th of Av, which is the historical count of Israel being attacked, what do you have? You have the red horse, right? The dove. The dove leaves. So the 40 days of the Son of Man end about July 31st. The raven spirit goes out and the dove goes out on the 50th. When we read about the red horse rider, it says peace was removed from the earth and a great sword was given. The sword isn't given to only one person. It means war begins to break out. And when the end of days war breaks out, it will begin in Israel. It'll be this compassing about, and the attack will be at the 9th of Av. What is the 9th of Av? You got it. It's the 5th month. It's saying for 70 years, which will have ended at that point. 70 years will have come to an end at the time of the Feast of Weeks. Okay, at the time of the escape of the bride of Christ, in that 7th to 8th day period of time I'm showing you. And so what ends up happening? Well, if you're going to then be in the 71st year, then the 5th and the 7th month, you're not going to get to in the 71st or 72nd or 73rd, which is why it says those 70 years. You only did it for 70 years. So we've understood this for years now, but we had failed for a long time in grasping the understanding of 70 years. Not anymore. Now we understood that it was 3 plus 1. And at the end of that 1, it's to the Lord. And then their 70 years began. It became theirs, which is why they're going to be 74 this year. 4 and then 70. And then what? The day after, they begin their 71st. So they're not going to observe the 5th month and the 7th month fasting and mourning in the 71st year, because they only do it to 70. So what that means is the Holy Spirit goes, the compassing about, and the attack, part of a compassing, and the first attack happens right here. So they're still in the land on the 5th month fasting and mourning, but they're not fasting and mourning. They've been attacked. They're crying out. It's going to be severe. It's going to be a Middle East war, and it's going to be short-lived. Then things are going to settle down. The modern day Cyrus is going to call a decree. And then what's going to happen? Then at the end of the year, okay, to Tishri 1, the beginning of the year, from the end to that beginning of the year, the second attack will come. And this second attack, 50 days later, which is the fast of Gedalia right here, they observe it on the 3rd day because even though it happened on the 1st, they don't want to have the fasting interfere with Feast of Trumpets. That's why they have it on the 3rd, but it happened on the 1st. So the fast of the 5th and the fast of the 7th will play out again this year. But it doesn't happen during the 50 from Feast of Weeks to then the 50 days to the Holy Ghost, of which the Son of Man has 40 in there. It doesn't happen during that time. It's once the Holy Ghost has left that it begins. And this is the first attack. And this second attack right here is going to be the one that keeps them out of the land. They're now going to leave. And they're going to be gone from the land for the next 7 years. And where did it start? What's going to flee them out of the land? At what point? The end of the year. This is the end of the year. The attack by the Ishmael typology, just like in Jeremiah, when Ishmael came, that was all about the fast of Gedalia when he came in and he killed them all. This was the second attack. They were allowed to go back in. They were going to start doing things, and boom, the second attack came by Ishmael. This typology of the second attack by Ishmael is the exact one we're talking about right here. It's the exact same type and shadow of 2 Chronicles 24, verse 23 and 24. Listen to what it says. And it came to pass at the end of the year. Interesting, right? The wording found over in Exodus 34:22 said at the year's end. This one says in the end of the year, but it's using the same word. Okay, 86:22. It's using the same word, but according to the revelation, it can't be the same time, because it says, and it came to pass at the end of the year that the host of Syria came up against them and came to Judah and Jerusalem and destroyed all the princes and the people and sent the spoils unto the king of Damascus. For the army of the Syrians came with a small company of men. Okay, this is why the Jews say, oh, they'll never come against us, they'll never be able to defeat us. We're the Jews, we got the greatest military in the area. Well, listen to what the Lord says. And the Lord delivered a very great host into their hand, because they had forsaken the God of their fathers. The Jews. Because they've forsaken the God of their fathers. Because they've been disobedient in the land. Because of their pomp and their pride. The host of Syria is coming with a small group of men as the same typology as Ishmael in Jeremiah, and is going to compass them about and destroy them in the second attack. When? At the end of the year. What did I just show the end of the year was? Right here. When the second attack at the Fast of Gedalia, the Ishmael attack, the Syria attack, this is the lion. Remember, the lion, the bear, the leopard. This is the lion attacking. This is the one that's going to cause them to flee from the land. And look at when it starts. The beginning of their year. Because why? It's to the house of Judah this time. It's the house of Judah that counts from Tishri to Tishri. And it was the house of Israel that counted from Nisan to Nisan. That's why when the house of Israel is over, when they flee into the wilderness, it'll begin at Passover. When they're raptured at the 6.5 years into seals, it'll be at Passover. Do you follow? It's so awesome. It's so awesome. And so this was the recent revelation. And you're starting to see where this issue comes up, right? The issue is that if this means the circuit of the sun only, then the question was by our brother Charlie, then doesn't this also mean the circuit of the sun? It would mean that that attack would also have to be at the time of our escape, at the circuit of the sun. Because we revealed that the circuit of the sun is not equinoxes. It is the solstice. It never had anything to do with the equinox. It had to do with the sun, the diminishing, and it has to do with John. It's all about John in this beginning. You see, it's believed that John was actually born at the time of the Feast of Weeks, right? Born at the time of the Feast of Weeks, which would make his circumcision at the 8th day at the circuit of the sun, the summer solstice. You want to see that little tidbit? Watch this. Watch this. I think I had it for another part, but I'm going to share it to you here and I'll come right back. Look at Luke chapter 1. Okay? And it came to pass on the 8th day, they came to circumcise him. So if John was born around the time of the Feast of Weeks, and he's circumcised on the 8th day, which we're saying is the direct connection to when his father cries out and says, the Lord has visited and redeemed his people, and this is the escape verse, then it would relate to the 8th day. Like the circumcision of us leaving, the circumcision of our flesh. Look at what the word circumcision means. Okay, watch this. Remember the circuit of the sun. The circuit of the sun means a revolution of the sun. And look at what the word circumcise means. To cut around, right? To go around. Look at that. Comes from 4012, which means around. Circuit of circuit around. When John the Baptist was circumcised on the 8th day, if he was born at the Feast of Weeks, he was circumcised at the circuit of the sun. This year is exactly matched up. His 8th day was the circumcision at the circuit. Wow. But now, let's continue on. Because obviously there's this question, and this was very, very important. Again, this is to finish up this portion that Charlie was asking about. How is this year's end the circuit of the sun? Because if it's the circuit of the sun, that means at the time of our escape, the time of the circumcision, there would be the attack by the lion, by the Ishmael, by Syria, by Assad from the north at the time of our escape and the beginning of the 40 days of the Son of Man. Well, that just doesn't make any sense, does it? It certainly doesn't make any sense. You can't have the Son of Man there for 40 days warning that an attack is coming and for them to prepare to flee only to find out that the day he got there, they were attacked. That would be kind of silly, wouldn't it? And this is where we were having a lot of issues trying to discern this when we thought it was just the 150 from the 16th of Sivan to the 6th of Av. But when we got the revelation that it was the next 50, and then it went from the 9th of Av to the end of the year, I said, wait a second. This glitch, something's not right in this. And you know what, brothers and sisters? I was so blessed because when you go to ministryrevealed.com, you can go to our website right here. From there, we have in the menu a link called the forum. And the forum has over 900 people in there. And we're sharing scripture and prophecy and encouragement and news and prayers and everything going on in there. A whole bunch of like-minded brothers and sisters. Well, in there, I remembered seeing a video being shared in there several days or maybe even a few weeks before, a couple weeks before. And I skimmed through it, but that was it. I knew what it was about. I knew she was talking about the word, the Hebrew word 8622. But I skimmed through it. But God is so good and the Spirit is so powerfully leading that in the revelation of all of this, and now understanding that it wasn't an attack happening during the first 50, just like the white horse rider. You see, we had already shared the truth of it. We just hadn't realized it. The white horse rider is here before the sword is given. And when the sword is given, according to Ezekiel 21, it's given first to Babylon, to Iran, Iraq. So that means the first attack never even happens while the Son of Man is here, which is perfectly in line with him not giving a warning after an attack has already happened. So we had understood this now. It became very clear. But then all of a sudden we had this dilemma because of this 7th month relating to the second attack, which was actually, as you know, the 2nd Chronicles 24. So the Spirit brings back to my memory this video I had watched a little bit in passing. And I said, I need to watch again. I have no idea what it was called. And I said, guys, can you help me out? And we had one of our brothers found it, posted it for me in the forum. And oh my goodness, I'm so glad he did, because I'm about to give you the answer, or I'm about to give you the answer through her understanding. But I want you to understand something. Her understanding was still half wrong, because as you see, she's talking about equinoxes, equinox and equilux, because there's a debate that's been going around for decades, maybe even longer, that Psalms 19 to the sun, moon, and stars and their creation, but that Psalms 19 with the circuit of the sun, people have been trying to tell us for a long time that it relates to the beginning of the year at the equinox, and it is not true. So in watching this, I have understanding. So I'm not confused in watching this. You guys can watch it, but I don't want you guys to be confused when you hear her talking about equinox, because what she spends her time doing is proving the understanding of the Hebrew word 8622, but she does it to disprove that it means equinox and to prove that it means the 7th month. Wait a second. She's going to help prove that part of it means the 7th month. But why did I say part of it? Because there is no denying, we have proven it here, that what she proves in relating to the 7th month is correct. But what she also talks about without even realizing is the connection in this one with the circuit of the sun, the course of the sun. She shows how documents reveal and talk about how this obscure meaning that's found in Exodus 34:22 in the year's end is directly connected to the one in Psalms 19. That's exactly right. But then she goes on to explain that the one in 2 Chronicles 24 is separate from them and relates to the 7th month, and it's proven out by the definition. What? Brothers and sisters, it had never ever dawned on me until we got greater revelation of the second 50, realizing where the two attacks were, realizing that the second attack was at the end of the year for the start of Tishri, and that it didn't have anything to do with the circuit of the sun. But it turns out this one word, 8622 in the Hebrew, has two definitions. What? Tekufa, tekufa. It's the same thing. Tekufa, tekufa. It's the same thing. No, it's not. Look at how they spell it here. And look at how they spell it here. They add one Hebrew letter. And do you want to know what the difference is? Check this out. Watch this. Where are you? Where are you? Watch this. Here's the one with the added letter, and it means period. If I take this one with added letter out, it means attack. Does that sound like the same word to you? Tekufa, tekufa. One means a period of time, and one means an attack. But both of them relate to a revelation of time, an end. They were both right here, brothers and sisters. One is a course or a circuit of the sun. The other one is a lapse of time. And they both have a relation to end. There are two definitions for the word, And that's because the people in Strong's couldn't discern the separation in them because they were so closely connected in their relation, but yet they were not the same. They're not the same. Check this out. Check this out. We're going to listen to a few minutes here and a few minutes there, okay? Watch this.
The pattern of usage show us about the tekufah. So this is the word tekufah, and right here below, let me see if I can actually get rid of this, make this bigger. Right here below, you will see the Strong's number, and Strong's suggest two spellings, and the alternative spelling has a vav in the middle, and from the lexicon, they include the spelling with the vav. So
there you go. What do you see? The Strong's Concordance has the two spellings. Why would you have the two spellings? Now, again, don't be distracted by equinox, equilux. Just throw that out of your head. It has to do with the circuit of the sun being the solstice and a compassing about for an attack. It doesn't mean they're the same time. One is a compassing about or an attack that comes at the end of the year, and the other one relates to a gathering in at the year's end, which is the solstice. Okay? So let me see what I had written here. Oh, watch this. I'll give you an example of something I just did. It just out of the top of my head. If I had the word all, and you see the definition, right? All, a whole quantity, a whole group. Well, what if I added a letter to the word all? And I did Y. So I have ally. All of a sudden you have a state formally cooperating with another, okay, like NATO allies. You go from all to ally. Is there a relation to them? Well, there could be a relation to them because they can all be your ally. But it doesn't mean all at the same time. So just a little something that came to my head as I was thinking about it. Okay? They literally used two different words. And they even tell you. It just never dawned on me that they were two separate. I thought course of the sun and elapse of time just simply related to the course of the sun. You're going to see, and I don't know why somebody shared this video with me. It just blows me away because it was exactly what I needed for this time. Okay? You're going to see that these two definitions, and this is why I love using the Strong's. It's the Strong's that has both definitions. If you were using the lexicon, it only has the one definition. So if you were in the lexicon, and this is why, my brothers and sisters, this is why she doesn't fully see it. Because if you just go to the lexicon, then you would think everything is actually pointing to the end of the year at the time of Tishri 1. So she thinks that because it's in the lexicon only this way, and it's as if the Septuagint couldn't make up its mind, but has one of them, that it must be that these definitions are all actually speaking to the end of the year. Not realizing that part of those definitions were absolutely related to a circuit of the sun, but not the equinox, the solstice. It is awesome. Watch this. Let's go to the next piece. Okay. We're going to look at some of these definitions here. You're going to see that in the lexicon right here, in the lexicon, she says in number 3, it says to go in a circle. And she goes and she tells us that when this going in a circle, it is the one related to Psalms 19. Because it's the one in the circle for the sun. And then what? Then she goes to number 5. And she talks about the lexicon, and how in the lexicon, when it's explaining the same word, it relates to the shaking off in Isaiah 17:6 and 24:13, which is related to
how they
the seventh month. To the seventh month. Listen to this.
the three agree with the same kind of idea. The lexicon says to cut, to strike, to fasten together, to go in a circle, to destroy. And this is interesting because this definition right here applies directly to the verse in Psalm 19.
So, see, this one in a circle applies directly to the verse in Psalms 19. What is the one in Psalms 19? It is absolutely, without question, the circuit of the sun, the beginning of the 40 days, if you will, the circuit of the Son of Man. Okay, the relation to him as the sun typology. This is absolutely related to the circuit of the sun. And that's what she's saying.
Then the fifth definition, shaking off olives, and it's listed as Isaiah 17:6 and 24:7. And I for a reason, I put the seventh month here. Strong's gives the same root, these three definitions: strike, knock together, surround, or circulate. And again,
all right, and now look at what happens when we get to Strong's. Look at the third one in Strong's. The third one has both of them. Just like the definition of Strong's, it has the course of the sun and it has the lapse of time. It has both of them. One of them means to surround for attack, and one of them means circulate, like the circumcision time of John at the circuit of the sun, which is absolutely equal to the summer solstice. Okay, so right there you're seeing within the description, and she goes and she breaks it all down, breaks down the roots and goes to the deeper roots of the word and finds these things out, showing that there are two definitions in the one. Let's go a little bit further. She gives us more great depth here. Watch this. Oops. Check this one out.
book, I took a photo of it. What is unique about this word? I want to show you first this little word right here. If I can pull it down, I'm going to go right up here to rise. Kum, kaf, vav, min, rise. It has a meaning, and it gives the very first position as the meaning to the root of this family of words. When we get down here to the word for cycle that they use in Psalms 19:6, you're going to see a very unusual thing. There's only one entry under this root. There's no verse that is associated with cycle. Instead, what they give you is they give you this tekufah in Exodus 34.
Did you hear what she just said? In going into this book and finding the etymology and the depth and the details of the words, this one, which is the word for cycle, which is the one directly related to Psalms 19, she says, is the one they have connected to Exodus 34:22. My brothers and sisters, that's precisely what we have been teaching here in this ministry. Without all of that understanding, we have understood for a long time that Exodus 34:22 is the year's end at the circuit of the sun. This is not the same year's end. It's not the same connection in the other places, but it is connected to Psalms 19, and Psalms 19 is what? The circuit of the sun. When the bridegroom comes, rejoicing as a strong man ready to run a race, It's the typology of the circuit of the sun. So not the same time. Two different definitions. Well, let's bring in the last piece I want to share with you in this. Let's go to 27. Go to 27, about 15. And let's listen to this final piece.
Now we're going to look at that one verse from the lexicon where it associated the noon kof fe sofit with the seventh month. Again, the seventh month, right? This is what we're looking at. Is it's the end of the agriculture. Isaiah 7.
You see that? She's saying that the relation right off the bat, she's there telling us that the relation that the lexicon and that one of the forms in the Septuagint, what it gave us, is directly related to the seventh month at the time of the gathering in of the crops of the harvests. Do you remember when we taught on this one? That the where is it? Oh, where is it? Memory, where are you? I got it. Exodus 23. Remember this one in Exodus 23? That we showed that this Exodus 23:16 in the end of the year, we showed that this end of the year was also the time of Tishri, was related to the seventh month. This is not the same gathering of wheat. This one is the gathering of fruit. This was the one that related to the 144,000. And this gathering in at the midpoint. Okay, so we've shared on this, we've broken this one down and showed that this end of the year relates to Tishri. Well, when we showed it in Exodus 34:22, it didn't say in the end of the year, it said at the year's end. So it's strange that it has a different wording, but it's appropriate here because they're two different periods of time. But in 2 Chronicles 24, which one does it tell us? At the end of the year. It doesn't use the same wording as the year's end. It gives us the same one as this one. In the end of the year. Because it's actually directly connected to it. Listen to what she says.
17:6. Yet gleaning grains, grapes shall be left in it, as the shaking, and that word is noon kof fesofit, of an olive tree, 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uttermost bough, 4 or 5 in the outermost fruitful branches thereof, saith the Lord God of Israel. So now the end in the seventh month. Now let's go back to the verse in 2 Chronicles 24:23.
Okay, so what she's showing here is this verse. So she just finished telling us that the Psalms 19 and the Exodus 34:22 were related together, but now she's showing that the relation in 2 Chronicles 24 is not associated with the same period of time, but it's associated with Isaiah, just as the lexicon says, which is the time of the seventh month. It was before our eyes the whole time. I just don't know Hebrew. It never dawned on me. It never dawned on me that there was an extra word, that there were two definitions for the same word. Because if you read something that's pronounceable to us, they're the same. So it never dawned on me. It turns out, one, my brothers and sisters, is the year's end circuit of the sun. Okay? Is the year's end and beginning of the circuit of the sun at its peak, at the circumcision time of John, that John must diminish so Christ can increase, because it was at the peak of the sun at the time of his circumcision, at his circling about of the circuit of the sun, the circuiting around, the circumcision around. But that the attack surround is absolutely related to the end of the year in 2 Chronicles 24 with Ishmael as the typology, as the actual lion in Jeremiah chapter 34. Chapter 4. That it's the lion of the north, Syria, Assad, that is coming up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. Because when the sword is given, it's given to all. It's the great sword that brings about war. You see? How awesome is that? Because that was something very important to us, guys. That was something very important to understand. We needed the clarity. We needed this discernment in 2 Chronicles 24. It was definitely something that recently, because of the new revelation that added to the picture, this was standing out and was causing an issue. But thanks to our brother Charlie for bringing it to my attention again, and for whoever originally posted that video and then who found it for me, so that we can understand that there was actually two definitions within the meaning of the word. And the two definitions did not mean the same time of year. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, let's keep going on this. Watch this. Now we're going to touch into something else here. We're talking about this timing. We're talking about the 40 days and this period of time we've been looking at, right? Well, you guys have all heard this before, I'm sure. Hopefully my internet's fine. Come on. You guys have all heard this before. Okay? You know, in the story of Exodus, okay? In the Exodus story, how many times did Moses go up to meet the Lord? Okay? There's a debate that you could say, oh yeah, he went up, I think, maybe 6 or 7 times. I think like 7 times, maybe even 8 times. But how many times did he go up to spend 40 days with the Lord? Twice. He went up twice for 40 days with the Lord. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, and we see it right here in Exodus 24 and in Exodus 34. This is why I told you guys at the beginning. Some of this stuff, I mean, we opened with a 1-2 punch with the whole lion and the Judah and everything else. But now we're going to get into something which is going to get levels deeper, because it's almost like all at once. We're going to talk about the was, we're going to relate it to the is, and we're going to show and explain it in the is to come. What? Yeah, all 3 of them broken down from this 40-day connection, with Moses. And this is why I want to bring it up. You guys have probably all heard this before, right? You've all heard this from church. What is the law of first mention? Okay? The law of first mention, like I told you guys near the beginning, is all about hermeneutics. So it's one of the aspects of hermeneutics is the law of first mention. Now, why am I talking about this? It's awesome. Because in the law of first mention, it states that wherever a thing is spoken about first, that description of it, that timing, that portion of it can be understood in events going forward from there. That if we're caught up trying to understand how that actually was, we should be able to go back to the beginning where it happened the first time and get clarity on it, or get more insight as to how we can look at it in the future. So I said to myself, What if we look at the story, not the story of Moses in the end of days, okay? We're not looking at Exodus in this reverse pattern that we showed for chapters to years. That's not what I'm talking about in this moment. I'm talking about the actual event itself. When it played out. When it played out at the what? The law of first mention? When the first Passover played out. We're going to follow this playing out of this very first Passover and fleeing and going to the wilderness. Okay? And let's see how it played out. We see that, of course, we know it was the 14th day. They were to kill the lamb, the time of the Passover, strike the lentils with the blood. We were talking about this in the previous video. The Lord goes on to tell them, this is what you shall do throughout your generations. Okay, this is an ordinance for a Passover, even to the stranger that comes in. And of course, we know that they're going to, he tells them, let me go into Esor. He tells them in Exodus 12, which is what? The very first Passover. Okay. They kill the Passover lamb. They strike the doorpost and the lintel. He tells them they're to do this on the first day and that it will be a 7-day. It will be a holy convocation and it will be something that you'll observe throughout your generations and it'll be a 7-day event. All right. So you'll have Passover and then from the morrow after, from the 15th day, it's going to be 7 days. There shall there be no leaven in your houses. Okay? It tells us, it breaks it all down, gives us the explanation. Did they leave after the 7 days of unleavened bread? No. They left on the self-same day after the 14th day Passover. They left on the self-same day, the first day of unleavened bread. They didn't observe, of course, we all know this, they didn't observe unleavened bread for 1 week. They left right away. They didn't have time for the yeast to rise, right? There was no time for it to rise. So they had to flee without any leaven. So the bread was flat. And so he's telling Moses at the same time that in the future, this is now what you're going to do. To remember, to commemorate this day going forward in years to come. You're going to observe a 7-day from this day, from the self-same day, from the 15th day, after the Passover sacrifice. You're going to have 7 days of no leaven in your house. Okay? But did they flee after the 7? No. They fled on the 15th day. Okay? They fled on the 15th day. And look at what happens. Remember, we're not looking at this into seals and into the end of trumpets and all that. We're looking at the event of what took place. Because I'm going to show you guys something here about the 40 days. Okay? And we come down, it says, and it came to pass in the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. All right. We see the law of first mention of Passover. Passover has taken place, and on the selfsame day, on the 15th day, they left. When did they get to the wilderness? They got to the wilderness in the 3rd month, the selfsame day of the 3rd month. Okay? So they left on the 15th, and they got there 8 weeks later. Okay? The 3rd month, self-same day. Of which what? One of those weeks, okay? Watch this. One of those weeks, the very first week, okay? From the 15th, the very first week was the week of unleavened bread. Okay? So the Lord told them, in the future, from this time forward, you're going to observe a 7-day feast of unleavened bread. It's the Feast of Passover, 7 days for unleavened bread from when you came out of the land. So in those 8 weeks, you have the first week, which was unleavened bread. What's the next 7? 1, 2, 3. Whoops. 1, 2. Yeah. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Remember, it goes the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th day of every month is the true Sabbath. So where do you get to your 8th Sabbath? Right here. Does that mean it should have been 8 Sabbaths to the Feast of Weeks? No. It was 7 Sabbaths, and the first one, making it 8, was the one that was included in it as unleavened bread that they still fled in. So how long do you think it was before they got to the water to cross over? I would bet you it was probably that week of unleavened bread. And then it was the next 7 to get to the wilderness. When they got to the wilderness, it was the 3rd month, 15th day. Let me ask you a question. Have you seen a 40 days yet? I haven't. There's been no 40 days yet. You're going to see why I'm bringing this up. The law of first mention, according to hermeneutics, we should be able to follow the law of first mention and say, well, okay, if Christ was the Passover lamb on the 14th of Nisan, and it was the week of unleavened bread, where's the 40 days? We've been all told that the 40 days of the Son of Man began right after resurrection. Not according to the law of first mention. I'm going to prove to you in the law of first mention that what we have been teaching is absolutely correct. Because so far, from Passover, the 7 days that were spoken about, and by the time they got here, there is no 40 days. Here they are at the wilderness at the time of the Feast of Weeks. And the same day that they get there, on the 15th, God starts talking to Moses. He says, hey, I brought you out. I brought you to safety. He says, if your people will listen to me, he says, go and tell them. He says, and the Lord said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today, tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready against the 3rd day. Now, woo, this is going to pose some questions here. I'm not going to go into the detail of it. I'm not so sure the timing of why this is here. But what else do we know happened on the 3rd day? Okay? What happened on the 3rd day? And Moses went down from the mount and unto the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, be ready against the 3rd day, and come not unto your wives. And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Feast of Weeks. He tells them, hey, go tell them today, tomorrow, and the 3rd day. And I'm going to come the 3rd day early in the morning. Kind of sounds like the crucifixion resurrection story, doesn't it? Now, I know it doesn't make sense because the lamb was crucified back at the time of Passover. So I understand that in that sense of first mention, it's not really jiving, is it? But I'm not gonna go into this and to break this down. My focus is the 40 days. And I'm gonna mention this though briefly in a little bit, for another reason though. So what we see here, Moses goes up and down and he's talking with the Lord. He goes back and forth and tells him to be ready. And then what? Well, we go to Exodus 20 and we see that they got ready. Okay? They got ready and the Lord is there on the mountain. Do you guys realize, do you guys remember? This is actually God talking. Do you know that the 10 commandments here, God is speaking? God the Father, the Lord God is speaking on Mount Zion on the third day, or on the mount on the third day in the wilderness. It is him speaking these commandments to them. And the people in verse 18, and it says, and all the people saw the thunderings and the lightning and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. Of course, they're freaking out. And they said unto Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak to us, lest we die. They're freaking out. Don't let God speak to us. We can't handle it. We're freaking out. And Moses says, hey, Moses said unto the people, fear not. God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that you sin not. And then he tells them, don't go worshiping other gods. Don't make gods of silver or of gold. And it was literally something he just told them on the third day from the mountain as they heard his voice. But they were so freaked out that they said, Moses, we can't handle it. You go and talk to him for the rest, and you tell us. Okay? And what do we see? This is still only the third day. So if we were looking at it this year, this is when they came on the self-same day into the wilderness. Okay? That's the typology there. And then what? You have 1, 2, 3 days early in the morning. So some of you guys are going to see where I'm going with this. 3 days, here it is, early in the morning on a Friday. That would equal this Friday. But do you know what we still don't have? Still no 40 days. You hear me mention anything about 40 days yet? Still no 40 days. Not until we get to Exodus chapter 24, when Moses said, when God has told Moses, get you, Aaron, Nadab, this one, and 70 elders for a total of 74. And we know that they got to what? They got to go up. It says, and they saw the God of Israel. All of these 74, they saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone. Whoa. Blue, by the way. And as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel, he laid not his hand. Also, they saw God and did eat and drink. This isn't weeks later. This is him saying, okay, when you go into 21 and 22 and 23, it's all of these things and the laws and stuff that he was speaking to Moses for Moses to give to them. But he still hasn't gone up for 40 days. So where are we? We're somewhere around here. He said, all right, Moses, go get these guys, bring these guys with you and come on back up to the mountain. They're still around that, within that first week of the Feast of Weeks, after the Feast of Weeks. And then what happens? It says, and the glory of God abode on the on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day, he called Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And what ended up happening? Moses went up the mount for 40 days and 40 nights. If we looked at that calculation, we'd be saying, oh, somewhere around here, it might go to about here. Do you know what we're seeing? we're seeing another version of the first 10 days. You see, what we're seeing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the Lord called him up. You see where we are? This is all relatively within our wheelhouse, right? We're looking at right here. This goes to right here. What are we seeing here? We're seeing a 3 plus 7. I don't believe that in the end it's a 3 plus 7. I believe it's a 7, a 40, and then, as you guys saw, from the 40 days of the Son of Man ending, 3. So I believe it's 7, then 40, and then 3. What was this story? 3, then 7, and then what? 40. Do you know why I'm sharing this with you guys? Because the law of first mention tells us that if you're trying to understand something, you're trying to discern something, and it's a little bit foggy, go to the place where it first happened. We've been told that the Son of Man, church has told us that the Son of Man, after his resurrection, was here for 40 days immediately following his resurrection. We've proven that's not true. We have proven it through scripture that it absolutely is not true. That the actual count of Leviticus 23 of the Feast of Weeks is 7 Sabbaths complete. When do you count the 7 Sabbaths? After the week of unleavened bread. Which is why when Moses and them got there, it was the 8th Sabbath. It was the Feast of Weeks. It was the 7th Sabbath plus the one for unleavened bread that was complete. And then what does it say for Feast of Weeks? Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall you number 50 days. So now you're going to count 50 days. We've proven this. We've been talking about this for a while. And do you remember where this revelation absolutely solidified the understanding? It was in 1 Corinthians 15, 4 through 8. Okay? That when the Lord resurrected on the 3rd day, he met with the 12. And it says, after that, he met with a whole bunch of brethren above 500, a large group, of which some are fallen asleep, but some are still alive. That means after he met with Caiaphas and the 12, he met with another group. And guess what? That's not it. Because then he says, after that, he met with James, then of all the apostles. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We've been told all our lives it was just the 12, or the 11, if you will. This says the 12, then a separate meeting with another large group, then a separate meeting with all the apostles, and last of all, Paul later on as one born out of due time. We know that this story in reverse is Luke, is the escape. So let's look at what it played out in the what happened. He met with Matthew's group, the 12. This relates to the heads of the 12 tribes. How do you get the 24 elders if there's not 2 sets of 12? You see? You have the 12, the head of the 12 tribes. This is the Matthew group that he met with. And we showed that this larger group that he met with next related to the Mark group, the 144,000 that are going to work during trumpets. These guys is when he comes at the end of trumpets, when he comes feet down on the Mount of Olives, then it's all over. And these guys go and work the millennial reign, the 12 tribes, teaching the world. This group here relates to the end of Mark and relates to the 144,000 being sealed who are going to work trumpets. That's why it's a larger number. When you come to this one and it says after that he was seen of James, then of all the apostles, this is talking about John. And it says last of all he was seen of me also, one born out of due time, which relates to Luke and the beginning of the 40 days. So what did it mean? It means that the Matthew group and the Mark group were the 7 Sabbaths count. Means there was a period of time, I don't know if he just came in and came out, if he just met with them briefly and then left, if he met with them again and then left, or if this revelation built into this isn't so much that it necessarily played out exactly like that, but it was revealing the is to come. Because what this tells us is he met with one, then another, and then another. And the revelation of it was the Feast of Weeks. 7 times 7 Sabbaths. In the end of days, it's 7 and 7 years. They are the last 2 sevens of the 7 years and 7 times 7 years of a Jubilee count. So what was a day count in weeks becomes a year count in the end of days. And we know that it's 7 for Mark's group and 7 to Matthew's group. Okay? Or you could say it's the apostles working for 7 years during seals. And at the end of seals, we know it's the time of the 144,000. And it's the 144,000 when they're done at the end of trumpets and the Lord has returned. These guys are sent out to work during the millennial reign. But in the is that took place when he resurrected, it must mean that he met with the 12, and then after that another group. It had to be during the 7 times 7 of Sabbaths, because when he meets with the apostles, that is the beginning of the 50-day count. That is John's gospel. In John chapter 20, at his resurrection story, in the is, it's don't touch me, I haven't yet gone to the Father. It's the beginning of the 50 days, because then he returns, he meets with some of the apostles, and he returns after 8 days. And when he returns after the 8 days, then he meets with Thomas, and then it goes to Luke chapter 24. And at Luke chapter 24 is the beginning of the 40 days of the Son of Man. Those are the disciples that were with him. The bride is now taken, and there's the worker group of disciples that will be under the apostles working during the time of seals. So we revealed this. We've spoken on this before in the past and revealed that this is the absolute evidence that the Feast of Weeks was 7 times 7 and then counting 50 days, proving that when you get to the end of the 50 beginning at the apostles in John's gospel, and you get to the end of the 40 days with the disciples, which brings you to the beginning of Acts, you get to the Holy Ghost. When you get to the Holy Ghost, it's Pentecost. It's not Feast of Weeks. Do you understand? Why didn't they just call it Feast of Weeks? Why did it get called Pentecost? You see? They could have just, all the other feasts were called the same. Why not call Pentecost Feast of Weeks if it was supposed to be Feast of Weeks? It wasn't. It was Pentecost because it was the actual counting of 50 after the Feast of Weeks. And this is what we've been showing. This is what we've been proving out in all of this. So in the story of Exodus, what do we get in the story of Exodus? That it was 7 and like the 7 Sabbaths, right? Plus the 1 for unleavened bread, which is what made it 8. And when he got there, when they get to the wilderness in the is type and shadow relating to the was in the law of first mention, it was the beginning of the 50 days from John into Luke that goes to Acts. You follow what I'm saying? If we go look at the calendar again, they got there on this day, and the Lord says, today, tomorrow, and on the third day, early in the morning, I'll come to you. He speaks to them from the mountain on Friday morning, early in the morning. They freak out. So God has to go talk, Moses has to go talk to God to relay the message. And God says, hey, you come back and you bring the other guys with you. So there'll be 74 of you guys together. And after 6 days, we ate and we chatted, we did these things. And then God calls Moses on the 7th day out of the cloud. When he calls Moses out, there was your 3, there was your 7, and now you have what? 40 days that takes you to what? The end of the 50, exactly as we've been teaching that the 50 comes after the Feast of Weeks, which proves that the 40 days of the Son of Man, according to the law of first mention, proves that the 40 days of the Son of Man did not begin in Nisan after the resurrection. The feast, the week count, the weeks, the Feast of Weeks count began. And his 50 started in the 50 days to Pentecost. The law of first mention has just proved, because there is only 240 days in the law, in the story of Moses. And if we take the law of first mention of the Feast of Passover and follow that story forward, the first time we see the 40 days is during the 50 count of what would be Pentecost in the is that was to follow when Christ came. Another 1-2 punch. I told you this was going to be filled with knockout punches. Absolutely proving over and over and over again. I love this, guys. You know, whenever we get revelation, at first, just like we did in the last portion, we get more clarity, but something that was a little bit off because we were trying to discern this 50 and it just wasn't quite fitting, but we knew it was there. And we knew these things would happen within it. Bang, we get more clarity. But when we get that clarity, it doesn't fit in every single part and piece. And then boom, we get more clarity. And suddenly that piece makes sense. And now the picture gets completed. It's awesome. It is so awesome. Well, now I'm going to share with you guys a little bit more. Check this out. Let me show you guys this one for fun. Well, you know what? I'll show you that one for fun in a moment. Now, let me show you something else. No, let me start with this one, and I'll end with that other one. You guys remember this? Remember I said, what did he say? Today, tomorrow, and early in the morning on the third day, right? Or in the morning on the third day, in the morning. So if this is the evening, there's the morning. Friday morning. Many of you guys know exactly what I'm going to talk about. What happened only, brothers and sisters, what time of year was it? It was the third month. It was the third month when they were brought to gather before the Lord, standing in the sand in the wilderness at the foot of the mountain to hear the Lord give them the law. To hear the Lord so that they would absolutely know and they would sin no more. Oh, it didn't work very well for them though. All right. But when did that happen? Right here. This would be that time frame right in here. Are you ready for this? Here he is again, my brothers and sisters.
I'm recording this to translate for my son's vision, to try to describe what he saw in his vision given by Jesus. On Friday,
I know you can't hear it. I got another thing I'm going to show you. Remember this, brothers and sisters? The little Swedish 8-year-old boy, I think back in 2015 or 18 or something like that. Well, I have the translation of it. Many of you guys have seen this before as well. There's a guy that's Swedish, of course, and he translated what the little boy said word for word. Okay, let me show you. He translates it word for word, and he lets you know, like in brackets is implied, translator's remarks. And this is what the little 8-year-old boy said. On Friday, it was like this, that we are at our home, and then at 7 a.m., everybody will come to this mountain, but not on the mountain, but on the sand. 7 a.m. Sweden time on Friday, the equivalent of when they were brought to the mountain of the Lord, 7 a.m. Sweden time, I think it's the same Israel time, 7 a.m. on a Friday, they were brought to the Lord at the base of the mountain in the sand, and they could not go on the mountain. Guys, we have been talking, we have brought up this little 8-year-old boy's dream and vision for a few years now. We have another direct connection in the year we know is the 470 coming to an end. And that the connection is at the time of the Feast of Weeks. And this was the day that they were gathered to the mountain. And this boy is saying a group will be gathered to the mountain. And then the mountain will crumble, right? Listen to this. I haven't drawn so much, he says. There was no room. And then, and there, it will be in Egypt. So he believes it's Egypt. We shared this before. It might be around the pyramids. And we saw in I Pet Goat 2. What do we see in I Pet Goat 2, brothers and sisters? At the end of it, we see what they try to make us think is the Antichrist character coming out on the boat. It's not. We've proven that's their deception, that it's actually the Son of Man coming. And when the Son of Man is coming, you see it's related to the sun, and you see meteors coming and hitting the top of the pyramid, and the pyramid crumbling. This is an 8-year-old boy's vision. And he says, it will be in Egypt, and then when all are asleep or something, and then they will become awake. And then when they have awakened and all are here and all are awake, the mountain will start to crumble. The dad asks to confirm, at an earthquake? Apparently the boy nods because the dad adds, crumbles at the earthquake. Goes on to say, there won't be snow on the top. It's just the way he drew it. And what's interesting, when I shared in a previous video a while back, is you see that the top of the pyramids, they have that added piece that looks like it's kind of a granite or a stone snow cap. So he talks about it falling and crumbling into thousands of pieces. And then we'll get 2 hours and 2 minutes to run and to tell others and to warn them that it was God, Yeshua. And when the 2 hours have passed, we'll go home. And Saturday, the next day, will be a completely normal day. And he goes on to say that that day you'll have the option to tell everybody that it was the Lord. Tell them now is the time. It was done by Jesus. It's time to go. And then he says on Sunday, because this just mentioned is on Friday, he says then on Sunday, as you go on to read it, on Sunday, we will all be taken into heaven. So according to this little boy, this would be the Sunday. Remember what I told you? It's in this zone Well, this little boy has an event that he saw as a future event directly connected to Moses' event when it was the third day. And he says they're all gathered around. Then it's going to crumble. People will be able to run around and tell everybody, and then they're going to be back in their homes like it's a normal day. And we can tell everybody what had happened, that it was the Lord. That's what crumbled everything over there. And then on this day, he says, we go. Remember what I told you at the beginning of the video? Or near the beginning of it? What day is this? It's the stone's throw. And even the I Pet Goat video, at the end of it, when Messiah, the actual Messiah, when he was coming out and they tried to deceive us with that vision, with the image of the one on the boat, we see the stone's throw at the pyramids in Egypt. What do we know is coming? A stone's throw. And the date we have the stone's throw is the 19th. I believe from that stone's throw, then it's the Son of Man. Like, he's also the stone, right? So at this stone's throw, it means it's him coming. I believe this is when the stone's throw is seen, and that we would go in here. But somewhere in this relation here is where we go. And this little boy's dream is smack dab in the middle of it. I wanted to share that with you guys because I thought that was awesome. Just another direct connection, right? This whole connection to when men's hearts will be failing them for fear of looking after those things coming on the earth. The powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and glory. This is those who will be ready. This is the bride of Christ. This is from Luke 21. And when these things begin to come to pass, look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. It's all of this, all of this, the entirety of all of this connection is all in this time frame of this year, June of 2022. All of it. Let me show you something else that's fun. I'm not going to go into everything because this was connected also into kind of a continuation with tying in some more Moses stuff, right? Which is the relation to seals. And I'm going to share a little bit of that to make another point on something Jared asked me. And then I was going to go into some more with Joshua, because I said Joshua is Yeshua. That's why Moses couldn't cross over. Jesus comes, he takes them over. The Father's there first, and then it's the events that happen in trumpets. We'll build that into the next video. But I don't want to leave you without this. Remember in Numbers chapter 14, it comes because of Numbers chapter 13, okay? That they go and they spy out the land, okay? Where are they? Well, in the wilderness. But before they're going to be stuck there for 40 days, for 40 years, they had to what? They went to spy out the land for 40 days. And when they came out, remember, I am not talking to you right now in looking at this in relation to the end into the seals portion, but we're relating it into the story of when they went into the wilderness. Let's not forget, right? They went into the wilderness. When they went into the wilderness, it was the 3rd month, 15th day. Then you had these events take place, okay? And what happens? Well, then a group was sent out for 40 days to seek out the land, okay? And once they came back with the bad report, 2 of them good and the other 10 bad, they ended up being punished for it, right? And in Numbers 14, it says, after the number of the days in which you search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, you shall bear your iniquities, even 40 years. So now, For the 40 days that they did at the beginning, they then had to bear it for 40 years in the wilderness, of which Moses was not going to be allowed to cross. Okay, so it's all the way back at the beginning when they just fled, and it's the third month. Okay, and Moses goes up for 40, and then these events are transpiring. So it's right around the beginning of the time of fall, if you will. I would say it's during the second 50 days. Okay, during what we're going to know in this is to come is the first attack and second attack, the 5th month to the 7th month. Within that period is when they would have gone to spy out the land for 40 days. When they return, they're told, too bad, you're now, because you guys don't believe that you could take it, your 40 days will become 40 years. Well, this is what our brother Jared had asked me. He said, do you believe it's possible that the 40 days that were given to them as 40 years when they were in the wilderness could be represented this time as 40 months in the end of days? Remember what we've taught here in this ministry? We have it in the book, right? We talked about it. I use this image a lot from the book. This is the PDF, by the way, of the book on page 142 on the PDF. See, 287 pages of the book. We talked about the churches, and we showed how the 7 churches played out their part in the was, in the is, and all that took place in the was, and all that took place in the is, and their typologies of the 7 churches will play out in a very condensed period of time during only 14 years of seals and trumpets. That's why I started this video by telling you guys again about Ecclesiastes 1, verse 8 or verse 10, right? What was shall be, and what is, the church age we're still in, shall be. It's all going to be packed in to 14 years. And the reason I'm saying this is because when you go to the 40 years that they were given, well, in the end of days, it's going to be much more condensed. And it won't play out over 40 years. But will it play out over 40 months? Okay? Days were covered. Years were covered. The only thing missing as a possibility is months. So now, this is why I said you need to be sharp on this one, because now I'm taking you from the was and looking at the is, and now I'm going to take you into the is to come. Is it possible that now looking at it as the relation that we've said, where they get into the wilderness? Watch this. Watch this. Now we're looking into seals. All right. Now we're talking about being in seals. Okay. Watch. Tribulation of the 14 years will officially begin at Tishri. Okay. Yes, there's the 2 attacks, but when they're gone from the land for the 7 years, it'll begin at Tishri. From Tishri, we know that the first 2.5 years of seals is the war, is the lion, the bear, and the leopard. Okay, we know it's going to be about 2.5 years from the 4th to the time of the from the 1st to the time of the 4th seal. Okay, you can say even the 2nd to the 4th seal. The point is, it's about 2.5 years, which is World War III, which begins after, okay, the Son of Man, the attacking and so forth. When they flee the land, you can start the 2.5 years. The 2.5 years out of the first 6 to the end of the 6th seal leaves 3.5 years. How long is this 3.5 years, okay? So if you go from from the fall feast, right, and you go 2.5 years, it brings you to what? It will bring you to Passover of 2025. So let's go to 2025. Let me show you this, because this is pretty fun. 2.5 years brings you to Passover, brings you to Nisan, and the time of Passover, 2025, approximately 2.5 years later, as we have been teaching for years, which leaves 3.5 years to the end of the sixth seal. What happens at the end of the sixth seal? Well, we know at the end of the sixth seal, which is the end of 6 years of seals, we know that they're going to see the Lord coming on the throne, sitting on the throne. Hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. So they're going to see this thing coming, them in the clouds, whatever this might look like. And they're going to be freaking out. This is the end of what? 3.5 years from the end of the 2.5 years, the first 2.5, when was Passover. And what happens at Passover in 2025? You guys remember it? The equivalent point of the 2.5 years in 2025, which will be the time frame of Passover, is right here. The abomination of desolation spoken of in Mark, standing where it ought not. This is the time when the Antichrist will receive his power to continue 42 months. It'll be the implementation of the mark of the beast and the worshiping of the beast and so forth. This is at approximately the time of Passover of 2025. If you're taking this story and we're following the same storyline and we're saying, could it be 40 months? Well, if the Antichrist at this point, when they're to flee to the wilderness, you see, this is when they're to flee to the mountains. This is when they flee. This is the mark, 2.5 years in of seals when they flee. Watch this. If we go to Revelation chapter 13, look at what we get. It tells us, see, who is able to make war with the beast? Okay, he has done something to put an end to World War III. Everybody will be so devastated. They'll be looking for any leader to really stand up and take control of things. And when he does, who is he? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. See, not claiming himself above God. He's not sitting in the temple of God. He's trying to get the mark of the beast for people, but he's only speaking great things against God. But he's not claiming to be God. He's speaking against God. This is the Antichrist. And look at what happens. He's given power to continue for 42 months. And you say, well, what does that have to do with anything, Alan? You said, is it possible that it's 40 months? Are you ready? If this is when they're to flee into the wilderness, in the same typology of Moses as mid-seals-ish, about mid-seals, 2.5 years in, and it would be at Passover when they fled, this is when they would flee. This was when Moses and them fled. When did they actually get to the wilderness and get established there in the wilderness? Not until here. Pray tell, how many months later? Nisan 15 to Iyar 15, 1 month. Iyar 15 to Sivan 15, 2 months. So when did they get into the wilderness? 3rd month, same day. Remember? 3rd month, self same day came they into the wilderness, which was exactly what? 2 months. Remember, 8 weeks, 2 months. So from in the wilderness, when they get to the wilderness on Sivan 15 or about June 11th, 2025, how many months do they have in the wilderness? How many months are left in the wilderness before the Antichrist's 42 months come to an end? Of course, you got it. June 11th, 2025, June 11th, 2025, add 40 months, as it was days given to them as years. In the end of days, it will be a much more crunched, condensed period of time, which could very probably will be 40 months. And what is 40 months later? October 11th, 2028. Let's go to 2028 and see the time frame of October 2028. Tishri, the fall feasts. Are you seeing what we're getting here, brothers and sisters? This is to the end of what? This is what? This is the end of the 6th seal. This is the end of the 6 years of seals, when they will have been in the wilderness for 40 months that the Lord gave them as days, that they then had to do as years, which in the end of days would be condensed into months. It's exactly counted. It is literally bang on to the day. Right there. 40 months in the wilderness. Watch this. Let's prove this out a little bit more, and then I'm going to be done. I'm not going to go into all the details of the other stuff. I'll keep that for the next video. But let me finish this point. Look at Daniel. I still have a video planned to go into Daniel some more, in particular Daniel 8 through 12, 11 and 12, and 10 as well probably. But I want to show you guys something. You see, for those that don't know, and they say, what do you mean there's an abomination of desolation in Mark, and there's an abomination of desolation in Matthew? They're just the same thing. No, they're not. This is why I keep telling everybody it's all about who the Gospels are speaking to. So listen to what it says here. And Daniel 11, verse 31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. These are the believers. The polluting of the sanctuary with the mark of the beast. And they shall take away the daily sacrifice. And they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. They'll stop all this killing of Christians and tell them, hey, take the mark. We'll give you the mark. Just submit to the mark. That's what this is talking about. That's the end time revelation of Daniel 11. There are 2 abomination of desolations in Daniel. One is in 11, one is in 12. The one in 11 is Mark's, the one in 12 is Matthew's. Listen to what happens next. It says, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. Okay, these are the workers, the seals workers, the disciples, and some believers that are converted during the greatest revival. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. These are the workers. Yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. This is that fleeing into the wilderness. When this abomination of desolation in Mark shows up, it's when the Antichrist gets his power to continue 42 months. And when they flee at the time of Passover in 2025, it'll take 2 months in the typology before they're in the wilderness and established. And they will be there for 40 months. But there will be those still instructing many. Some will get caught, some will be burnt, some will, enslaved and so forth. Now, when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And then you get this wording for the workers. This is the Smyrna group of workers right here. And some of them of understanding. See, the ones that were instructing many. Some of them of understanding shall fall to try them and to purge and to make them white even to the time of the end, because it is yet for the appointed time. Do you know who makes them white? Do you know the timing in the churches of the end of days? The timing of the white is Pergamum. What is the time of Pergamum? The time of the martyrs? It's the time of the fleeing from the doctrine of Balaam. Listen to this. And will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna. Why are they going to be given the hidden manna? Because this is the group in the wilderness. This is Pergamum. Remember? From the book, look what happens at Pergamum. It's Constantine, the typology of the Antichrist coming to power. And it's what? When they go to the wilderness. When they go to the wilderness. Do you see what it says? Numbers. Do you know why it says numbers? Because it's the exact portion where I was telling you the 40 turned into years, and the typology in the end is where the 40 will begin. Right in the exact place where they should be getting fed the hidden manna, because they will be living in the wilderness just as they did and were being fed with the hidden manna. Now listen to this. And I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name is written. Well, look at what Daniel said in this exact time frame of what we're talking about, which is the equivalent of mid-seals fleeing. Listen to what it said. And some of them of understanding shall fall to try them and to purge them, Smyrna workers, to purge them and to make them white, even unto the time of the end. Okay, look at who he is. Remember we saw in 13? Listen to what it says. And the king shall do according to his will, and shall exalt himself, and magnify himself above every little g god. See, not the Father against the little g gods. He's trying to take Jesus's place as the capital G God of the little g gods. So above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods. This is the same description as the Antichrist one, the beast, in Revelation chapter 13. Which is the perfect timing, because it's those that are fleeing now to the wilderness at his abomination of desolation and going after the Christians now, and the institution of the mark of the beast and the worshiping and the idol and so forth. Look, go to Daniel 7 and you'll see this same timing. Here's the lion that first attacks Israel, or that main attack that gets them to then flee for the next 7 years. Then the bear. This is when World War III really takes off at the bear. The lion is what instigates it all once and for all in Israel. And then it'll be followed by the bear with World War III, of course, Russia. The leopard, which you can see all the coordination taking place with Germany right now and siding and trying to stay out of the way against Russia. And then what do you have? the fourth beast, the one with the 10 horns, who will stamp the residue with his feet, right? He's going to crush those palm branches under his feet. And who does he have the power of? Well, we know from Revelation 13 that he's the lion. He has the feet of the bear. He has the body of the leopard, because that's where the control center is all going to be run from. And he's the beast. He's the fourth beast. And what does he do? Listen to what he says. Until what? End of the 6 years of seals? The Lord God, they're coming down on Mount Zion. Hide us from the face of him, like Revelation 6. From him who sits on the throne. There's those who come with him. And then what is he going to do? He's going to destroy that beast. But the rest of them, their time is going to be prolonged for a season in time. And then who comes? The Son of Man. On the clouds of heaven, with the clouds of heaven, to the Ancient of Days, and dominion and kingdom is given to him. This is the end of seals, then to the start of trumpets. And what was he doing? It's the fourth beast. It's the same guy. See, he spoke blasphemous words, right? We saw it from Mark 13, the abomination. We see it Daniel 11. We see it in the exact typology and the timing to the 7 churches revealed in the end of days. We saw it in Daniel chapter 7 to the end of the Lord coming. And then, of course, let me finish it with this, brothers and sisters. Because when the rapture happens, we've done this video about the podium. That 717 is the end days revelation as well. That it begins with the Feast of Weeks. That the rapture comes in at the 7-year unleavened bread at the time of Passover. Okay? In the 7th year of seals. This is the number 2. This is the middle. And then number 3 is the other 7, which is tabernacles, when the Lord returns, feet down, when it's all over. Well, guys, if you remember the video I just did called It Starts It and Ends It, see 717. This is God's name, Yod He Vav He. Okay? Starts it and ends it. And when we showed it, it was 717 starts it and ends it. And we did it using the 40 days of the Son of Man at the beginning of everything, and the 40 days when he returns and Satan had rule and reign for the last 2.5 years of trumpets, that when the Lord returns at the end of the 6th trumpet, it'll be the 40 days again that will begin the final 14th year. So this was that video, starts it and ends it. But guess what? I'm about to show you. And what did it relate to? It related to Genesis 7 verse 17. The 40s that start it and the 40 that ends it. Well, I'm going to show you another 717 that's going to blow you away. Because all of this is relating to what? What are we talking about? We're talking about the Lord returning. So we're talking about them 2.5 years in, fleeing into the wilderness, taking 2 months to get there. They're 40 days in the wilderness. 40 months in the wilderness. Then the end of the 6th seal comes. The Antichrist is killed. The Son of Man is brought. And then the gathering back, the rapture is going to be coming next. And when the rapture comes, which is in the 7th year, so we go to Revelation chapter 7, after the 6 years of seals are done, we see the 144 are sealed first. And then what do we see? The great multitude rapture. Here's the great multitude rapture. Okay, they survived in the wilderness and they made it to the Lord, and they made it alive, never having tasted of death, to the point of the rapture for this group. And look at what it is. Revelation 7 verse 17. I did the video that said not only will it be in order 1, 2, 3 like a podium, I also said 717 starts it and ends it, but we can add to it, it's also the middle of it. It's all 3. 717 is the revelation of pre, mid, and post. That is awesome. Now, this was a long one, and I still have so much more, but there's no way I'm going to put you through that. I'm going to save it for the next video and build on it even deeper, going into Joshua and the representation of Yeshua, which is directly at that point at the end of seals going into trumpets. So, brothers and sisters, with that, I love you. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.